pleasure now to ask Leah Achdut to come up. She's with the Department of Economics and Management in the School of Social Sciences and Management in the Ruppin Academic Center. Is with Van Leer. Leah directed the research departments at the National Institute, the National Insurance Institute. That's our social security system. Leah, do you need this?
No.
Go ahead. But you need this.
Yes, I need. The paper examines the effect of the 1992 pension reform introduced into the public pension system in Germany on the subjective well-being of the current generations of pensioners, focusing on the impact of increasing the mandatory retirement age to 65. The paper is interesting and important because the rapid aging of the population around the world is a major challenge to the affordability of pensions and financial sustainability of retirement systems, as well as to the well-being of the pensioners. As a background, the paper describes the demographic trends in the OECD countries and its future fiscal implications on the pension systems, and present a comprehensive review of the recent empirical literature on the relationships between retirement and subjective well-being, and of the 1992 pension reform in Germany. The paper is still preliminary, and the empirical results relate to the estimated impact of the reform on women only. The first point to which I would like to refer relates to the potential methodological contribution of the paper. It is emphasized in the paper that the major weakness of the existing literature is in regard to the causality in the relationship between retirement and subjective well-being. It is unclear whether the differences in the subjective well-being between the retired, for example, between the retired and the non-retired, are a cause, an effect, or the consequence of an uncontrolled third factor. Several methodologies were employed in the literature. I will give some examples. Multivariate regressions on repeated cross-sections data, what we call pool data, using panel data for comparing subjective well-being over time, before and after retirement, using fixed effect linear models, or other techniques as latent growth modeling, or using policy changes as instrumental variables, or, for example, one of the research conducted in Canada, using data on direct question on the subjective well-being after retirement relative to the situation a year before retirement, of course controlling for the other variables. In terms of measuring the causal effect of retirement on life satisfaction, it is not sufficient to control for time-invariant unobserved factors that are correlated with life satisfaction, since factors that could lead to early retirement may be also time variant. The conclusions of the literature, therefore, are very mixed. And therefore, the most significant feature of the paper is in its research design. The 1992 reform in the German pension system and the way of its implementation create a natural experiment which enables to distinguish between a treatment group, which includes individuals who were exposed to the reform, and a control group, which includes individuals who were not exposed to the reform, and then to identify the effect of the reform by comparing the two groups. The exposure of an individual to the reform varied by date of birth and gender, and depends on the retirement pathway. The meaning is that the increase in the mandatory retirement age is treated as exogenous, provided that the choice of the retirement pathway can be controlled. The identification of a natural experiment, which I personally in favor for evaluating policy changes, are very common. I did it for evaluating changes in the duration of unemployment benefit payments, and it is a good solution for controlling for all the variables, and I did and observe the causality between the policy and the variable in under the research. The authors mentioned and stressed that their knowledge that there are only few or two attempts that have been made so far to estimate the impact of the increase in the mandatory age on subjective well-being using natural experiment. There are two Danish researchers in this matter. Several clarifications are needed. I hope that I fully understand the article. I have the opportunity to read it only yesterday. So if I have any mistake, please correct me. The reform under investigation had three key measures. One is the mandatory retirement age was raised from 60 or 63, it depends on the retirement path, to 65. Benefits were adjusted to the age of retirement, and early retirement leads to a reduction in pension and late retirement to a bonus. Benefits were indexed to the net income rather than to gross income. What is special in this reform, it's not only that it's compared to other reforms, it is very simple and not complicated, but that the two last changes were implemented immediately and for all the benefits, for all the pensioners, independent of the date of birth. Only the first change was the variable that enable us to distinguish between the control and the treatment groups. So I think that this point it's not stressed in the paper, and I suggest to clarify this point. The second point is that it isn't clear to me, even not in the case of women, but it's the simple pension type, how you intend to control for the retirement pathway, because even in the case of women, you can find disabled women, so you have to omit them from the sample, or to give a special treatment to them. It also will be of much help to show some data on the characteristics of the of the control and the treatment groups, so there is no idea about how much they are similar or different. And another comment is that I will suggest to shorten the macroeconomic background and to focus the paper on the subject of estimating the impact of the increase in the retirement age on the well-being of the pensioners. I said that it is a very simple reform. Increasing the pensionable age. The pensionable age, I said that it is the most visible parameter of the pension system, and around half of OECD countries are in the process of increasing pension ages or have already legislated to increase it for the future. However, it is only one policy response to the fact that people are living longer. Many countries gone further and have elements in their mandatory schemes that provide an automatic link between pensions and a change in life expectancy. For example, this is a result for example, introducing DC schemes that substitute or adding to the public pensions or transformation to the NDC schemes, or link between benefits level or qualifying conditions for pension and life expectancy in several ways, such in Germany the sustainability factor. And however, these changes have very important implications on the pension entitlement and on the individual uncertainty inherent in this linkage, but it's a very difficult task to evaluate their impact on the well-being of the pensioners, and we have the opportunity to do it in this simple reform. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Jonas, please. Could you take the microphone, please? Thank you.
Leah? So thanks a lot for a very interesting presentation. I think it's a great effort and a very nice idea to use the pension reform setup in Germany for this kind of modeling approach. I have a couple of questions and remarks. Maybe I start with the question. So so here on this concluding slide you speak of sizable effects. Maybe you could tell us a bit more about how the treatment status is actually measured and scaled, and the dependent variable as well, because this was minus 0.2, just to have an idea of how much of a difference it is that we are actually talking about. And then generally, so I don't agree it's a simple reform. I think it's a very difficult pension reform, because it raised not only the normal pension age in the different pathway scenarios at different synchronous times for the different cohorts that are affected, but then there are also different exception clauses for each of those pathways. And we have men and women being affected in a different way, and not only the old age pension system, but also the disability pensions are changed in the conditions that are applied to pensioners. So I think it's very challenging to model that, and particularly with this kind of data. I mean, the ZEP is the German Socioeconomic Panel is a great data set in many respects, but I think you lack some key variables, or at least the desired data quality on some of the variables that you would want to have for identifying the different groups. So now you only showed us the results for women. So here we have the big difference between women that are entitled or not to the special women's pensions. So they need 35 years of contributions. But in the socioeconomic panel, you do not have this information. So how did you actually try to proxy eligibility? Because I think this is really crucial to know whether a woman was able to take up a pension at age 60 or not, pre-reform, and then consequently how she was affected. And then maybe just talk a bit more about how you also plan to extend that kind of modeling approach to men, where we have this multiplicity of pathways where it's just not so easy to just say, okay, was it this one old age pension type he or she was available to, but you have to take into account all the exception clauses and whether or not, you know, all the special requirements that enter in the Vertrauensschutz, in these exception clauses for the different types. But yeah, thanks again. It's really a great effort.
Thanks for your comments. Very interesting, and I will try to answer. I will start with Leah. So the first comment about the simplicity of the reform. I think what Leah wanted to say about the fact that the reform is simple is that is simple in the sense of the fact that there is this increase in retirement ages that is clearly marked and does not confound with other pathways. For example, you have different modification in the disability or indexation rules that take place at different time, and so I think that was your simple idea. And so it's true, and the point is not stressed. And this allows, especially the indexation rules, since affect all pensioners, starting well before the put in place of the phasing of the increase in the retirement age for women, in the estimation procedure can be eliminated thanks to fixed effects. So all the factors that are common to women treated and non-treated, and that are not really the treatment, are eliminates by the difference in difference estimator. The characteristics. Okay, the second question was about the identification, and this is also another question for men. This is a very complex issue. And what we have tried to do, and I didn't present the results, but we have already tried to estimate the effect for men. What we have tried to do is really to have different definition of retirement, as Axel Borschuppen does in his paper, and different definition of the way men leave the labor market using the disability status that is not really are you disabled? There is no question about a disability, a possible disability or a possible employment, but there are a question about the extent of limitation and disability in work. And so we have used this criterion together with the length of experience on the labor market. We have used the calendar. Try to and the retrospective module, and we have created a length of presence on the labor market. And this is also for women, so this is a way also that allows us to identify women that are eligible in the new pathway. But so using this different definition of retirement, and it's not the only thing is not very clear, is that if this disability status allows really to identify well men. Is not clear at all, that are in different pathways. And the other thing is the issue of unemployment, that is not it's not very, it doesn't work very well. So we accept this, but if you look at all the papers that have been written about, especially the Axel Borschuppen, that is a great expert in this field and in doing the German socioeconomic panel, he has done more or less the same thing. He has looked at early retirement, and he acknowledged that there is this difficulty, but he has defined the different pathways as we do. So I don't think this is a perfect way of doing this, but nothing is perfect when you do applied econometrics or econometrics. It's a point, and this is why we decided for the moment not to present the result, because we need to be sure of what we are really doing. The result that now we have show that there is also an effect for men, but it's very, very small. So it's significant, but it's not sizable. And this is, we think, is really due to the fact that we are not able to identify well the different retirement pathway. So this can be an issue. But we have been doing different things to solve this problem. That probably are not satisfactory, but we'll see. Concerning the data about the characteristics, you are completely right, of treated and control. As you said, you had the paper yesterday, or you read the paper yesterday. It has been a run against time to run this paper, because we have written this paper for the workshop, because this is a paper, this is a project that has been financed by the European Commission. We have a project with them about subjective well-being and policy change in a number of dimensions, so family policy also, and this is a project that is ongoing, and so we should have delivered at the end of June, mid-July. So it was a great effort to try to put this together, and I know that it's preliminary, it's not complete, but it's very worth pointing this out. I will certainly do this. Concerning the dependent variable, as I said, the dependent variable is life satisfaction, and we treat this as a linear variable. We don't use the ordered model, categorical method for dealing with categorical variable, and there is a kind of a huge literature behind this, especially by Andrew Clark, that show that, and Ada Ferreri Carbonell, that shows that there is not a huge bias in using simpler model from an econometric point of view instead of a categorical variable in this kind of stuff. This is why we use this linear model. And I should say that is also better talking really from a theoretical econometric point of view. I would say that this is much better in terms of the methodology, because I used the paper, I wrote a paper on job satisfaction when individual level may differ, so we used the disorder logic fixed effect that with Paul Freiters, and it's a mess, so you don't know what you are identifying there or what's so. And so it's much better to have a simple model that can say something instead of a complication. And so in terms of the effect, you will see. The effect that I'm sorry. Yeah, the effect is very nice because so what this table shows is that the treatment is that you have a 0.2. We are not using log, so is a unit modification in life satisfaction that is associated with 0.2 and 10. Yes, on a scale on 0 and 10. So in a sense, is if you pass from 0 to 1, if you increase of 1 unit, you will have a 0.2 variation in life satisfaction. And this is important. This is a 5% impact if you transform this. What is important is that it's significant in all specification. And what we have done here is the effect at specific age. So we have looked at what's going on if we look only of women at age 60. If we take the age group 60-64. And if we take different effects at each age, at different age, and you can see that you have always an effect that is significant around age 60-61, and afterwards it's just a temporary reduction. Yeah. Yeah, and you can see this, by the way, that is interesting when looking at the cumulative effect between age 60, 64, that is really more little. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Go on.
I really hate to keep you from your coffee break, but you started sort of referring to this, and I'm wondering about how one would generalize this finding about the drop in satisfaction close to the point of retirement, so that those that are basically were entering that last phase with the expectation of one expectation and suddenly have to change this, to an issue of what will be the satisfaction of women, say, 10 years younger when they reach that age, and see this older age of retirement as almost like a sort of a normal or a standard way. And I'm thinking about the fact that we're looking at this retirement age and prolonging or pushing this further up without really talking about what's happening at the beginning of the labor force. And what's been happening is entering the labor force at later ages for many people. So if we think about this, what we're in some sense doing is shifting the span in which people are working later in life, because people are living longer and young people are entering because of education, because of other things at a later age. And I wonder whether this sort of suggests looking more in terms of the accumulated years which one is actually working in the labor force, and then foregoing an actual age of retirement to just how many years of work have you accumulated, and that would be sort of the way of looking at when one can retire. Because there's a whole shift here in what's happening over, I don't know, the last 50 years or whatever time we want to take in terms of when people are working. So I sort of wonder, maybe satisfaction would be the same as it was before for people coming into this retirement age shortly.
That's an important point, and the interesting thing is that this modeling allows to eliminate cohort effects. So these are not these are dealt with, and this is really an important matter here. But what I would like to say is also that Germany is a very specific case, because if you look at participation rates of women, and this is a way also to answer a little bit more your question, participation rates of women at older age is very, very low. And this means that we are looking already at a sample that is very specific, because we take people that have worked in the interval between 50 and 60. So we are, in a sense, looking at a specific group of people that are there on the labor market. And it's true that cohort of women are entering the labor market later, but it's also true that it was possible, and you correct me if I made a mistake, to buy the year that were spent in the education system. So I think this has changed recently, but it was possible, like in Italy, to have to rush. Yeah, yes, no, it was given free. So you had just to go to the pension insurer and tell them that you were having education in higher education. So you were it was officially entering the labor market at the time of the beginning of higher education. That is a way, by the way, to deal with later entry in the labor market. This is another thing that is occurring in many OECD countries. So, but it's
the system gives points on
yes, exactly. The eligibility, yes, is the qualifying period.
The minimum period for eligibility.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Cut it short.